Okay, just this one today is what I'm going to review. It's probably the hardest of the groups kind of videos that we have. Actually, this page is easy. 5 to the second is just 5 times 5. You multiply those together, 2 5s, and that's 25. Okay, now with the fraction, you can't overthink it. It's just 1/3, 5 1/3 multiplied together. Okay, so I multiply the 1's on top and I multiply the 3's on the bottom. Okay, and that gives me my final answer. So 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. Now on the bottom in the denominator we have 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, and that's 243. Okay, -7 to the 4th power, that's -7 times -7 times -7 times -7. That's 2,401. Now the reason it is positive is because there's an even amount of negatives being multiplied. -3 to the 5th power, so -3 times -3 times -3 times -3 times -3. Okay, that's -243. Again, the reason it's negative because this time you have an odd amount of negative factors. Okay, now it gets a little tougher on the next one. Okay. Got to simplify this expression. So I'm going to circle the parentheses and also create my division line right there. If you don't see the division line, you just underline the whole expression and everything starts off on the top. So stuff that's not circled, we have a number 2 and a letter X. Only write the X down one time. Okay. So now let's figure out our 2. So our 2 is to the 1 power. Okay, it's to the 1, but it's in the circle, so that 1 power has to be multiplied by 4, and 1 times 4 is 4. Okay, then the X, there's 2 of them. Here's my first X. Now it's to the 2nd power, but that's in the circle, so I got to take 2 times 4, and that's 4. And then my other X is on top of the line, so plus. And then you just write 5 down. That's not in the circle, so you just don't do anything with the 5. Okay, so I take 4 plus 5, and that's 9. Okay, now the second box is for, I'm looking for negative exponents. That's positive, so that stays. That's positive, so that stays. So this is on top, so it stays on the top. This is on top, it stays on the top. Okay, then I clone what I can. So 2 to the 4th would be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. It's not 2 times 4, okay? And that's 16. So that gives me a product of 16. So I replace this with 16. And then I can't clone a variable and get anywhere, so that's x to the 9th. So 16 times x to the power of 9. Okay, my next problem. The dividing line's right here, and I have 5. Okay, it's really the only thing I have. I don't have any parentheses, so I don't have to multiply any exponents out. So here's the first 5. It just has a 2. It's not in a circle, so I don't multiply. Here's my next 5. It's on top, so I add. And that's a 4. I just write 4 down. Then my last 5 is on bottom, so it's minus, and that would be 3. So 2 plus 4 is 6. 6 minus 3 is 3. So cross this out and put 3. 5 to the 3rd. And that's the only factor I have. Now it's a positive 3, so it stays. Okay, it's on top. It's going to stay on the top. And then I can clone that factor 5. 5 times 5 times 5. And that gives me 125. So the 5 to the 3rd is replaced with 125. And I don't need anything on bottom. I mean, you could put a 1 there. It's the top that you can't have empty. Okay, now here's my next problem. We have two different dividing lines, but since it's times, you can just extend this. Okay. And the parentheses I have here, now it goes across the dividing line, but that's okay. So any power out of here is multiplied by 5. Okay, so on top of the line, I have a number 6 and a letter R. So 6 multiplied by R. Now, bottom, I have a number 7, a letter R, but I already have R on top, so we don't put it on bottom. And then I have a letter S. That's an S, not a 5. Okay, so 6 is to the 1, but there's no bubble. I did not put a circle around it, so it's just going to be to the 1. And then the 7 is to the 1, and I didn't circle that, so that stays to the 1. Okay, now let's talk about the R variable. Now there's two different ones. Here's my first one. Okay, go left to right on top. So here's my first R to the 5th, but that's in the circle, so we got to take 5 times 5, and that's 25. Now my other R is on bottom, so that's going to be a minus as the operation. That's just going to be 10. I didn't put a circle around it, so I just put 10. So I take 25 minus 10, and that's 15. So R is to the 15th power. Okay, now the S is to the 1, but again, that's in the circle. That's in the bubble. So we got to take the 1 and multiply it by 5, which is 5. Okay, now you have 4 factors, 6 to the 1, R to the 15th, 7 to the 1, and S to the 5th. Now that's a positive 1, so it stays. That's a positive 15, it stays. That's a positive 1, so that stays. And that's a positive 5, so that stays. Okay, so everything stays. So that's on top, it stays on the top. 6 to the 1st does. That's on top, it stays on the top, R to the 15th. And that's on bottom, and it stays on bottom. That's on bottom, so it stays on the bottom. Okay. All right, now 6 to the 1st stays 6. That's just a 6. And then 7 to the 1st stays 7. You don't really clone it if it's to a first power. You just get rid of the first power. Then R to the 15th and S to the 5th. Those are variables that can't be cloned. Okay, now the 6 and the 7 are on opposite sides, so we will not do any operations with those. Okay, here's my next problem. First, I need the dividing line. Okay, it's right there. And here's the only parentheses with a -2 outside. So -2 belongs to everything in that. Okay, but not the x to the 4th. Okay, so now on top of the line, I have a number 8. And then for letters, I have a letter X and a letter Y and then another letter X. But I only write the X down once. Now the 8's to the 1, but it's in the bubble, so we have to take 1 times -2. It's -2. So 8, you can write a -2 down. Okay, now let's talk about the X. It's to the 6th power, okay? But it is in the bubble, so I take 6 times -2. And that's -12. Okay, now I do have another X. It's on top of the line, so that's adding, okay? And I'm going to add 4. So I take -12 plus 4, and that gives me -8. So I cross that out, and X is to the -8th power. Okay, now the Y. Here's Y. It's to the -3rd power, but it's in the bubble, so we got to take -3 times -2. That gives you 6, okay? Positive, because a negative times a negative is a positive. Now, look at all your factors individually. That is a negative, so that does not stay. That goes to opposite. Put OPP. That's negative. That does not stay. That goes to opposite. And that's positive, so that stays. Okay, 8 is on the top now, so what's the opposite of the top? the bottom, and then the negative 2 turns into a positive. That's why if it's negative, you move it to the opposite side of the line so that the exponent can turn into a positive. Okay, then the x, that's opposite. It's on top now. What's the opposite of the top? The bottom. And then negative 8 turns into a positive 8. And then the y is on top, and it's staying, so it stays on top. Okay, and then I clone what I can. I can't clone the y because that's a variable. You can clone the 8. So 8 times 8 is 64. So we replace the 8 to the second with 64 times x to the 8th power, because you don't want to clone an x 8 times, because I don't know what x doesn't have a number to represent it. And that final box takes me to my answer. Okay, now next. This is a very big number, a lot of digits. We write it in scientific notation. So blank multiplied by 10 to a power. Okay, so first I need to find my first decimal. Now if I don't see it, it's at the end. Now go find the first number from left to right. This is left, this is right, that's not a 0. So the very first number's not a 0. So the decimal needs to go behind the very first number. So it's got to move from here to here. So then it's going to the left. And left means the power's positive. Okay, so I don't put the negative, it's a positive. Okay, now move the decimal from here between the 7 and 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so here's my decimal. There's a 7 in front and a 3 behind it. And our power's positive. Now I count the digits between the decimal points. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 7.3 times 10 to the 9th power. Okay, now in this problem, you're just writing that in standard form. You just multiply it on your calculator. 3.26 times 10, hit your power key, it's the caret key, and then negative 6. Okay, so it's a number with a lot of digits, so 0 point, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros, 3, 2, 6. And I don't put any commas because everything's after the decimal. Commas are for stuff before the decimal. Okay, now for this one. Currently you make $2,500. That's the original amount you make at your job in a month. The pay scale says you get a 4% raise per year. How much will you be making in a month 5 years from now? So there's money down there. So I know what to do at 2 units. I need to determine the relationship. So dollars and years. And X is the time unit. And that's my Y unit there. So it's per year. And dollars per year. Now the only thing I see about per year is the 4% raise. So 4%. Okay, so since it's a percent, I'm not going to make my line, okay? I'm going to set up an exponential equation, okay? And also one thing, if it's a percent, you want to put down here how many years you have, and you have 5 years, okay? So blank times blank equals blank, and then we have our original, our percent, and our new. So we want to do our percentage first. So I take 100%, and in big capital letters it says raise. So add 4% to that. That gives me 104%. Now divide that by 100. That's 1.04. Okay, so 1.04. But since this happened per year, you need to take a power to the 5, okay? And then $2,500 is my original amount. Now, if it didn't say per year and just said a 4% raise, well, then I wouldn't put the 5th power. But since that happens per year, it's to the power of 5. Then X is your new. Okay, and you can just multiply that 2,500 times 1.04. Hit your power button, 5. and 3,401. Take the first two digits after the decimal because you are talking about money. Okay, so 3,041.63. Okay, and then the last one. The number of pandas in the world is currently 900,000. That's the original. These are an endangered species, and they're decreasing at a rate of 5% per year. How many will there be 20 years from now? Okay. All right, so my two units are pandas and years. So the time is my X unit, and then panda is the Y, and it always is like that. So it's per year. And then pandas per year. Okay, now the only thing it says about per year is the 5% decreasing. So I put 5%. Now since it's a percent, I'm going to want to put the number of years, and it's per year, and it's 20 years. Okay. So blank times blank equals blank. So we have our original amount of pandas, and then our percent, and then our new amount of pandas. Okay, get your percent first. So you got 100%, but this time in big capital letters it says decreasing. So that would be minus 5%, and that takes me to 95% as my decay factor. So then I divide by 100. That's 0.95, and that's your percent. But since that percent occurs per year and you have 20 years, you take it power 20. Okay, now 900,000 is the original amount. And then you're finding X. Okay, so I take 900,000 times 0.95, then it takes 95% of that to the 20th power. Okay, so now this is not a money amount problem like it was here, so I'm just going to ignore the numbers after the decimal. I don't need the two digits after the decimal if it's not a money problem. So 322,637. So put commas where they go. That's how many pandas are going to be in 20 years.